The release of Windows 95 has been the most talked about event in the history of the microcomputer industry. A remarkable thing for a program whose most important function is to run other programs. But amid all the hype and the largely favorable reviews has been precious little in the way of simple explanation of what Windows 95 is, what's so great about it, and what may not be so great about it. I'm Brit Hume, ABC News White House correspondent and an avid computer user. I write a nationally syndicated column for people like you and me, average users who don't wear pocket protectors or write programming code, but who would like still to master their computers or at least get comfortable with them. Like many of you, I'm self-taught. I approached computing looking for a better way to get work done and simply sat in front of my first computers and by trial and error, and there was a lot of both, found my way around. I've always wanted a system that was easy to figure out, easy to use, and fast. That's what Windows 95 is designed to be, and to a great extent it succeeds once you get it installed and get the hang of it. But that can be easier said than done, even for people who've been using earlier versions of Windows. Believe me, I know. I've used Windows for years, and I've been experimenting with trial copies of Windows 95 since long before its actual release. I want you to benefit from my experience. That's why we put together this survival guide, to help you find your way around Windows 95 without an advanced engineering degree or even a pocket protector. We've tried to make this video helpful to users at all levels. You'll notice a small icon in the corner of your TV screen. It indicates the section of the video, and it corresponds with the icons on the enclosed reference guide. If you fast forward until the next icon appears, that will be the next section. This method of identifying sections occurs throughout the tape, so if you want to skip a section, you can easily find the next one, or if you have a specific subject in mind, you'll know exactly where to find it. First, a few general observations about Windows 95. Many people are asking why they should switch. Their DOS or Windows 3.1 setup isn't broken, they say, so why fix it? But a better question is not whether to switch, but when. The new Windows applications being written today, some of which are already available, are being developed for what's called the 32-bit architecture of Windows 95. It's a little technical, but it may help you to think of a 16-bit system as one that moves data along a 16-lane highway. A 32-bit system, by contrast, has twice as many lanes and therefore can move data twice as fast and efficiently. Windows 95 specifications say it can operate in 4 megabytes of RAM. This is technically true, but only if you want your computer to run with the speed and efficiency of Congress. At a minimum, your computer should have 8 megabytes of RAM, and 12 or 16 are better still. The more RAM Windows 95 has, the more quickly it will operate. The existing Windows 3.1 system requires about 10 megabytes of hard drive space. 95 requires 65 to 70 megabytes of hard drive space, but because it is an upgrade, it will absorb 3.1, so you'll only need about 55 to 60 megabytes of additional space in order to upgrade. And the programs written for Windows 95 will inevitably be larger than those for Windows 3.1, requiring a larger hard drive to store them and to store the data files you create with them. A good basic system for Windows 95 would be a 486 processor with 8 megabytes of memory or more and at least a 300 megabyte hard disk. Since a much larger hard disk costs only a little more than a small one, you should spring for a big one if you can. More memory is better too, but RAM is costly and you may have to think twice. But don't go below 8 megabytes. You can upgrade all three of these elements in your computer, the central processor, memory, and hard drive, but it may be better, not to mention easier, simply to buy a new system. A good rule of thumb in deciding whether to upgrade or buy new is this: if it costs more than $1,000 to upgrade, buy a new system. Before we get started, let's go over some terminology we'll be using when talking about the mouse. You'll notice that the mouse has 2 buttons. Some mice have 3 buttons. The buttons we're only concerned with are the left and right buttons. Clicking refers to briefly depressing the left mouse button once. Double-clicking refers to quickly depressing the left mouse button twice in succession without moving the mouse. Dragging refers to depressing the left mouse button, holding it, and moving the mouse around. Right-clicking refers to briefly depressing the right mouse button once. Right dragging refers to depressing the right mouse button, holding it down, and moving the mouse around. Now we'll proceed with installing Windows 95. Some of you may have already done this, and if so, you may want to skip this section. For those of you who have not yet installed 95, the first thing I advise you to do is back up your system. I know. You're tired of being told to back up your system. It's like being told to floss your teeth. It's a pain and you'd rather not bother. But I have good news. Backup systems are cheaper to buy and easier to use than ever. You network users probably already have a backup facility. If you do have access to a backup device, you'll have a path back to your current setup if things go haywire installing Windows 95. And believe me, when installing a new operating system, things can go haywire. Plus, your data will be safe and you'll have a way to back it up in the future. Remember, whatever happens with Windows 95, sooner or later your hard drive will fail. They all do. I promise you won't be sorry if you back up your data now. Tape backup drives can be had for under $250, and that's for external units like this one that hook up easily to your printer port. Ones that go inside your system are only about half as expensive. They both make backing up a breeze. As long as your backup drive is big enough to handle all your data, you don't even have to be there. Just start the backup and go do something else, like flossing your teeth. If you don't have a tape backup and are not in a position to buy one, you still should back up, but I can't recommend with a straight face that you do it with floppy disks. It takes forever and you have to sit there the whole time swapping disks. This isn't flossing, friends. This is a root canal. You may, however, be able to get away with backing up your data files only and relying on the original installation disks that came with your software to protect you in the event of a disk crash or some installation mishap. Speaking of avoiding swapping disks, I highly recommend purchasing the CD-ROM version of the Windows 95 upgrade, assuming, of course, you have a CD-ROM player on your computer. It is faster and more convenient because your hard drive can read information more quickly from a CD than it can from a 3.5-inch disk. And Windows 95 comes on more than a dozen 3.5-inch floppy disks. The upgrade will take anywhere from 40 minutes to perhaps an hour or more, depending on the speed of your machine, your installed hardware, and the options that you choose during the upgrade. So get comfortable. One more thing. The Windows Install program may tell you at some point to actually turn off your computer and turn it back on again. If that occurs, do it. But do not do this for any other reason once you start the upgrade, because you could be left with a system that won't start at all. You start the installation process much as you would with any new Windows program. You put the CD or floppy disk in its drive. If you haven't done it already, load Windows. By the way, if you're running any kind of shell, disable it and reload Windows the way Microsoft intended. Your shell program won't run the Windows 95 installation program. From the Windows 95 Program Manager file menu, find the Run function and click on it. In the small window that opens, type the letter of the drive where the install disk is, for example, A for your floppy disk or D for your CD-ROM drive, followed by / and the word Setup. The actual drive letters may vary for your computer setup. Click on OK, and you're on your way. The Windows 95 install program is pretty smart, and it needs to be. Its first job is to analyze your computer, figure out what its basic configuration is, and then determine how best to install this huge new operating system. In the PC-compatible world, there's an almost infinite variety of systems from various manufacturers with various amounts and types of memory, hard disks, video circuitry, all kinds of similar but still different stuff. Windows 95 will activate what's called a wizard, which is a step-by-step series of menus to walk you through the installation process. There may be some hitches. There are, for example, a few MS-DOS functions that Windows 95's install program does not like, and if you're using one of them, Windows 95 may ask you to exit, turn that off, and start over. The install wizard should tell you how to do this. It's a nuisance, but remember, this is a major bit of surgery you're performing on your system, and the friendly install wizard makes it as easy as possible, and the chances of success are quite high, but you still have to do your part. Be patient. Now, at some point during the install process, you'll be asked where on your hard disk you want to put Windows 95. You can leave your existing Windows 3.1 files intact and put the new Windows in a different folder, or you can use your current Windows folder. That would be my recommendation. It saves precious disk space, and Windows 95 will still not completely wipe out your existing Windows configuration. And once you've got Windows 95 up and running, it will give you the option of uninstalling it and going back to your old setup. If you followed my advice on backing up your software, you will have another path back to your old configuration as well. In addition, if you install Windows 95 in your current Windows folder, the install program will check your current configuration and import your Windows program groups into Windows 95, a major convenience. You will also be prompted to create a startup floppy disk. This is an emergency diskette that will get you at least started in Windows 95 if something goes wrong on your hard disk. You can make the startup floppy later, but you might as well do it now so you'll have it. You'll need a formatted floppy disk to do this. The setup wizard will ask you a number of questions along the way. Don't worry, you already know most of the answers. What's your name? What company do you work for? You will also have the option in a few places of telling the install program what kind of configuration you want. It will give you the choice of a custom configuration. Don't worry about this either. Another of the options is what the program calls a typical setup. This is the safest choice, but as we'll find out later, it may mean you'll have to do a little detective work later to find out how to use some of the handy features that Microsoft, in its wisdom, has determined not to include in a typical configuration. Answering these questions isn't hard, but it will mean that even if you're using the CD-ROM installation program, you're still going to have to sit there throughout the entire process. Sorry about that. You'll also be asked if you want to install the Microsoft Network, Microsoft Mail, and Microsoft Fax. If you're certain you want any or all of these, go ahead, but you can easily afford to skip these three for now if you're not sure you want them. There will be an icon on your desktop at the end of the installation process called Inbox. Double-click on it, and if you haven't installed the above three, Windows 95 will open a setup wizard to guide you easily through installing Microsoft Network, Fax, and Mail. Assuming all goes well, or at least reasonably well, you should, within about an hour, arrive at the moment you've been waiting for, when the install routine will tell you you're about to run Windows 95 for the first time. You'll notice that Windows 95 comes up with no intermediate stops in MS-DOS along the way. MS-DOS is still there, but it's not visible in the startup process that takes us here to the fabled Windows 95 desktop. Clean and elegant, isn't it? Look at those pretty icons. But wait, there's something called My Computer and a so-called recycle bin and some other things. But where are all your programs? I'll show you where they are, but before I do, I want you to know that you can put anything you want, any of your programs, any document you want, your favorite games, right here on the desktop, and I'll show you how to do it later. For now, though, your programs await you just a few steps away. The first of those steps is a mouse click on Windows 95's most advertised feature, the Start button. As you can see, that brings up a snazzy little menu with both words and icons on it. At the top of the menu, Programs. Simply move the mouse cursor over the Programs icon, and here they are. You don't even need to click anything. You can click if you like, but you don't have to. You can just hover and wait a moment. That list you see now should include all the program groups from your previous Windows setup. Windows 95 has gathered them all up and made them a part of your new configuration. Oh, and if you're not comfortable with this, Program Manager itself, you remember from Windows 3.1, is still around. It's here in the main folder. Click on it, one click will do in the Start menu, and there it is. It looks a little different, indeed a little drab. Instead of a screen full of colorful icons representing your program groups, it has these little gray tabs that do the same thing. Click on a group and a window opens, just as in Windows 3.1. If you're homesick for Windows 3.1, this should give you a place to go and a way to get your program started until you feel a little more comfortable. This is also the place to come if Windows 95 for some reason has not included one of your program groups. You establish it exactly the same way you did in Windows 3.1. You remember, open the File menu, choose New, choose Program Group, create the group. Then select that new empty group. Remember, program groups are called folders in Windows 95, and it's back to the File menu again, choose New, then Icon, and so on. Once your group is established in Program Manager, Windows 95 should find it and make it part of its master list of programs on the Start menu the next time you start up. Now, back on the Start menu, you should be able to find your favorite applications. Hover over or click on the appropriate folder. It opens. Then click on the mini icon that represents the application, and you're off. Now, let's start an application and see what Windows 95 has done to the look of existing programs. Let's use Microsoft Word as an example, since it's a standard Windows application. We find Word's folder. In this case, it's in the Microsoft Office folder. We open it. and click the Word icon, and up it comes. Back in Windows 3.1, the main screen in Word looked like this. Here's the same thing in Windows 95. Same program. This is the Windows 3.1 version, but it has a slightly different look. In the upper right-hand corner before, there used to be those familiar up and down arrows that let you shrink or expand the program window on your screen. They've been replaced by a set of 3 buttons. The X, a new feature altogether, will close the application. The middle button will either shrink it to a window, or if it's already a window, restore it to full screen. Finally, there's this line button, which is the minimize button. It shrinks an active program down to an icon on the taskbar. Those icons on the taskbar representing open programs that have been minimized used to look like this across the bottom of your Windows 3.1 screen. Now they appear as mini icons embedded in one of Windows 95's other celebrated features. This narrow panel across the bottom of the screen, that's the taskbar. The taskbar offers a handy way to move back and forth between the programs that you're currently running. Just move the cursor onto the taskbar, click on a mini icon, and it will take you where you want to go. Notice that when Windows 95 restores a program that has been shrunk to an icon, it does it with a flourish. Its title bar shoots up the screen and then its window opens. Minimize it and the reverse happens as the title bar dives back to the taskbar and the window closes. You can also add sounds to those window actions, and I'll tell you how later in the Customizing Windows section. If you find you need more icon space on the taskbar, you can drag the taskbar borders to enlarge it. You can also move the taskbar to other parts of the screen just by clicking on a blank space on the taskbar and dragging it to the desired location, which can be any of the 4 sides of the screen. The taskbar is also where you find the Start button, so it can not only help you move around among active programs, but it gives you a quick way to open other programs and features as well. Think of the taskbar, the Start button, and the Start button's menu as closely connected and always available. That's how they appear on the screen, and that's how Windows 95 has organized them. In Windows 3.1, you may recall, you could switch among active programs using the Alt and Tab keys in combination. You can still do that. Alt-Tab first brings up a panel containing your active programs. There's a box around your current program. Keep pressing the tab, the box moves to the other programs. When you get to the one you want, release the buttons, and you're there. One more thing. The taskbar has a clock in its right-hand corner. Since you're just getting started, you'll need to set it, and that will give us a chance to sample one of the other new features of Windows 95. Hover over the clock and right-click. A menu appears. The top item is Adjust Date and Time. Click on that, and this clock and calendar appear. You set the month using the small arrows here, the year with the even smaller arrows here, and the day by clicking on the proper day in the month window. The small arrows beneath the clock face are where you set the time. Once you've set it, it stays set. As you could see, that right mouse button brought up a short menu. Short but powerful. Since we're in the neighborhood, let's use it to do a little work on the Windows 95 desktop itself. We just position the pointer anywhere in the blank part of the desktop and right-click and choose Properties. That opens a window with 4 tabs across the top. This is where you can choose the color of your screen, your wallpaper pattern, if any, and such other things as your screensaver. There are other ways to get at these options, but right-clicking is often the quickest way. The right mouse button is used mainly for changing options and properties of a particular object. Right-clicking on an object, be it the desktop, a file, or an icon, is like asking the object, "Hey, what can I do with you?" And the object responds with a list of choices. Here's what happens, for example, when we click on it while hovering over a blank part of the taskbar. It brings up a short menu with our old friend, the Properties option. Click on it, and we get this menu which lets us customize both the taskbar and the Start button. This, for example, is where we can choose to hide the taskbar until we need it. It's also where we can choose to add our favorite programs to the Start menu. In Windows 95, this is done by a process called creating a shortcut. It's a new name for a familiar practice of using an icon to start an application or other program, and those familiar with Windows 3.1 will recognize it easily. It's a step-by-step series of menus by which you locate the program, assign it a name, and give it an icon. If it's a Windows program, it will have its own icon, which it will find automatically. There are other ways to add things to the Start menu, but this is probably the easiest to follow. Just right-click on the taskbar, choose Properties, and take it from there. And while we're on the subject of the Start button, let's take a closer look at the other choices Windows 95 has already put on its menu. First, the Documents option. You'll see the names of files you've worked on in recent Windows 95 sessions. Click on one, and it not only retrieves the file, but it opens a Windows application that will allow you to at least view the file and possibly work on it depending on what application you use to create the file. After a while, a lot of documents can accumulate here, and it gets stuffed like your inbox after vacation. It's easy to clear it, though. Here's how. Back to the taskbar, right-click. One of the taskbar options is Properties, you'll recall. Click. Click again here on Start Menu Program. That gets us to a window that includes the Documents menu and a button to clear it. Another Start Menu option is Settings. This takes you to a sub-menu which includes the Control Panel, similar to the one in Windows 3.1. The Control Panel in Windows 95 is Command Central for configuring your system and gives you access to a set of icons representing virtually everything about your computer. I'll explore this whole issue of configuring your system later, but for now it's enough to know that this is where you can get to the options. You'll note that there's a Printers folder in the Control Panel. Back on the Settings menu, there it is again. The Printers option lets you install and configure printers. You can also add a printer, a process made easier by the same sort of software wizard that helped you through installing Windows 95. The third Settings option is the taskbar. Click on it, and what do we get but the taskbar Properties menu, which we used just a few minutes ago to clear that Documents window. Now, back to Start, and click on the next item down the Start menu, Find. This is a new feature in Windows 95. Find will locate any file on your computer. If you don't remember where you saved something, but you remember the name or even part of the name, Find will draw up a list of all matching entries within your system. Better still, Find has what it calls an advanced search feature that lets you look for a file by other characteristics, including a word or phrase within it. You enter the word or phrase in this window and click on the Find Now button. Find scans your hard drive looking at the kinds of files you specified, or all files if you choose, in search of the words you entered. When the search is done, all the files that match are listed in one place right here. Once you've found the files, you can work with them copying, deleting, moving, viewing. Next down the menu is the Help icon. Microsoft has tried hard to provide more help and more kinds of it in Windows 95, and as you can see, one of the options available here is what's called a 10-minute tour of the software. Windows 95 Help also makes extensive use of what are called cue cards. They're similar to wizards in the sense that they take you step by step through whatever you're getting help on. In some cases, you will actually execute commands by clicking on buttons provided by the cue cards. For example, let's see what happens when you look for help in setting up a new printer. Click on Start, then on Help. In the window here, type Printers, and in the window below, a list of printer topics will quickly appear. Click on Setting Up. A cue card appears, and it tells you simply to click on this little box, and it launches a wizard, and it takes you from there. Next on the Start menu is the Run function. Not much change from Windows 3.1, but more immediately available here. You'll note that the Run window has the familiar Browse option that lets you find and run a program by clicking through your computer's disk drives and folders without your fingers ever touching the keyboard. And finally, there is the Shutdown option, which you're supposed to invoke anytime you turn off your system. The reason is that Windows 95 is using some sophisticated data management techniques that sometimes, for example, may delay writing a file you've saved to your hard disk. If you turn it off prematurely, you can lose the data. So stop here on the way out, choose the Shutdown menu option, and wait for the on-screen message to tell you it's okay to turn off your system. The Shutdown menu also lets you restart Windows, restart your system in MS-DOS mode, or for network clients, sign off and log on as a different user. Now that you know how to find your programs and use the basic functions of Windows 95, let's go back to the desktop and have a little fun. You'll need that Windows 95 installation CD I mentioned earlier for this particular step. Put the CD in the drive. Now let's right-click on the desktop, choose the Properties option, then choose Background, and click on Browse. Now let's look at the installation disk. We're looking for a folder called Fun Stuff, and in it, one called Pictures. There are two. One of them is called clouds.bmp. Let's click on it. Click OK, and presto. Those pretty clouds you see on all those Windows 95 ads are now your desktop background. If you want to make this change permanent, copy that clouds file, clouds.bmp, from the CD to the Windows folder of your hard disk. Now, let's go back to the desktop and let's put something of our choosing on it. Put the pointer in a blank area, right-click, choose New, then choose Shortcut, and follow the process we discussed earlier for establishing a program icon. That's one way. If you don't like that, try this. Go to the Start button and right-click. From the short menu that appears, choose Open. That opens a window containing the programs on the Start menu, those programs that you've put there, plus a folder representing the master list of your software. We open that folder and find our way, Windows 3.1 style, to the program icon we want. In this case, let's go to the Accessories folder right here, and in it we'll find the familiar Windows Calculator. Holding down the right mouse button, that's the right mouse button, drag that icon out onto the desktop like this. Release it. A menu appears. Choose the Copy Here option, and the calculator icon is now on the desktop. You can move it around by clicking and dragging it, or you can keep your desktop icons in order automatically as follows. Move the mouse pointer into a blank area and right-click. From the menu, choose Arrange Icons. From the submenu, choose Auto Arrange. That will keep the icons in neat rows. There's another way to place an item on the desktop by using Windows 95 Explorer, and I'll tell you more about that later. Now, this brings us logically to another item Microsoft has put on the desktop, the icon labeled My Computer. Double-click it open, and it presents a list of your computer's disk drives, plus the printers and control panel folders. Windows 95's instructions tell you that the principal tool for managing files in Windows 95 is a new feature called Explorer. I'll tell you more about Explorer in a minute, but you should know that there are a number of housekeeping jobs that can be done from My Computer. Right-click on a drive icon and you get a menu of functions you can perform, including formatting and copying a disk. You can examine its contents by clicking the Open function. My Computer's File menu gives you a limited set of functions you can perform. What you can do depends on the type of file. You can open a program file, that is to say, run the program, or rename, or delete it. You can also open a document file, though the program may want you to tell it what application to use. You can also print, delete, or rename a document file. The Edit menu here allows you to copy the contents of a document file to the clipboard or paste the clipboard's contents into a text file. Using a slightly more cumbersome procedure, you can also copy and move files from one place to another on your hard disk. You double-click open the disk drive in question, then the folder where the file is. You then click on the file you want to copy and drag it to the destination folder and drop it onto the icon representing that destination folder. The rest is automatic. If you want to move the file instead of copying it, hold down the Shift key while dragging and dropping the file. As cumbersome as this seems, it does allow file operations between windows, which is a logical and easy way to perform such tasks because it lets you see and compare the two directories or folders. Now, one more thing along these lines. When you're working within an application, if you've selected an object from one application that you would like to paste into another application, you can do that by simply dragging the object to the taskbar and hovering over the destination application. What will happen is the destination application window will come to the forefront, all ready for you to drop the object on it. Now let's talk a little bit about Windows Explorer. Unfortunately, Explorer does not allow you to compare two directories by viewing the contents of each side by side. Of course, you could open two copies of the program at once, but talk about cumbersome. This makes Explorer a step back from the old Windows 3.1 file manager, at least in this respect, and possibly in others, as we shall see. Explorer, which you will find located at the end of that master file menu on the Programs menu, is, however, a much more complete file manager than my computer is. It does use two windows, one displaying your computer's disk drives and directories, as well as icons representing the desktop, the control panel, the printers folder, and the recycle bin. If you click on a drive icon, the other window will display that drive's contents. If you want to copy or move a file to another folder or drive, you can do that by dragging or dropping, but you must first make sure that you have moved that drive or folder into view in the left-hand window, which is not always easy to do. And here's how you do it. You first pick the folder whose contents you want to see, and once you've clicked on it, you move the mouse pointer back to the vertical scroll bar in the left-hand window and move it up or down until the desired destination icon becomes visible. In this way, you will be able to drag the desired file to the desired destination folder. Explorer also has a toolbar across the top of its window and what's called a status bar across the bottom, which you can choose to display or not as you please. Explorer's Tools menu also gives you access to the Find feature we examined earlier. You also have the option in Windows 95, including Explorer, of displaying large or small icons. In most instances, smaller icons will probably serve you better simply because you have more of them on the screen at once. Not only are the large icons larger, but as you can see, they are spaced much farther apart as well. If you're like me, you like to have as complete an overview of things as you can get, and the smaller icons are better for that purpose. Now, here's how to use Explorer to put something, either a program or a file, on the desktop. Open the folder where the item is. Let's make it the Windows folder, since everybody has that one, and the icon for the solitaire game, which everybody also has. I'm using the large icons just so you can see what I'm doing better. The icon is called Sol, but you can recognize it easily because it's a deck of cards. You can put it on the desktop either of two ways. One is simply to click on the icon and drag it onto the desktop and release the mouse button. Another way is to right-click and drag it onto the desktop and release. That will present the little menu we saw earlier, which lets you choose whether to copy or move the icon onto the desktop. In this case, we want to copy it. The reason I've spent so much time showing you ways to put things on the desktop is that for many basic users, the most sensible configuration of Windows 95 would be to have all your commonly used applications and utilities on the desktop where they're in plain view every time you start your system. Now, let's compare ways of moving from one task to another with a couple of different configurations. Say you're at work on a document in Microsoft Word and you want to start another of your favorite programs. If all your programs are on the desktop, the fastest way to get at that other program is to move the pointer to the minimize bar in the upper right-hand corner and click. Word will shrink to an icon on the taskbar and your desktop will be visible. You can then start the second program by double-clicking its icon. When you want to go back to Word, you point to the taskbar and click on Word, and back it comes. By the way, you may from time to time encounter a program developed for Windows 3.1 that won't come back when you click its icon on the taskbar. You can usually bring it back by right-clicking instead, which gives you that menu whose first item, as you can see, is Restore. Just hit the R key or click on the R, and the program should spring back to life. Now, if you've put your favorite programs on the Start menu, you can get from Word to another program by clicking the Start button, then clicking the program icon. It takes about the same amount of time either way, and once both programs are loaded, moving back and forth as we've seen is easy. You can either use the taskbar, clicking on the icon you want, or the old familiar method, using the Alt key in combination with the Tab key. Finally, of course, you can put your favorite programs on both the Start menu and the desktop. Here's a tip you may really appreciate if you think you may find yourself a little homesick for the old Windows 3.1 file manager. It's still around. Unless you've deleted it yourself, it should still be in your Windows folder under the file name winfile.exe. That's not a new name. It's what the program file has always been called. It was only the Windows icon that was called File Manager, and since File Manager was always there in the Windows main group, chances are you never knew its DOS file name was WinFile. Well, now you know. And here's how it looks with the redecorating done by Windows 95. You should be careful how you use it because it does not support the long file names Windows 95 does support. As a result, using it can truncate your new long file names and possibly cause you to lose track of your files. And it's important to note that this warning applies to all of your old DOS or Windows file utilities. They can wreak havoc with long file names. In addition, of course, your Windows 3.1 applications will not support longer file names either, so getting the benefit of this celebrated Windows 95 feature may have to wait for the day when you have upgraded your applications. Be aware, however, that it is possible to get Windows 3.1 applications to support long file names, and at least one third-party Windows 95 add-in, the Norton Navigator for Windows 95, does this. Other Windows 95 utility programs are sure to have this feature as well. If you're connected to a network and have configured your system to work on a network, you should have an icon called Network Neighborhood on your desktop. Now that you already know how to navigate through My Computer, you'll find Network Neighborhood very familiar indeed. Double-click on Network Neighborhood's icon. You should see an icon Entire Network. Double-click on the Entire Network icon. You'll see icons of work groups available for you to connect to. Double-click on a work group. Now you should see the servers available within that work group. Double-click on a server, and you'll get a list of the server's shared resources. Shared resources, of course, include drives and printers. The rest is just like navigating through My Computer. If you selected the portable option from the Windows setup, or you selected the custom option and included Briefcase in your Windows setup, you'll have the My Briefcase icon on your desktop. If you would like to install it, stay tuned for the section on adding and removing programs. Now, My Briefcase lets you keep your files synchronized with those on other computers. This is useful, for example, if you use a notebook computer on the road. Rather than trying to manually figure out which files you changed when you were traveling, you can use My Briefcase to figure it out for you automatically. It is designed to work with network computers, either hardwired network computers or dial-up. But it can also be used with computers hooked up by nothing more than the kind of serial port cable you may be familiar with if you've used, for example, the popular LapLink file utility. Once your computers are communicating with each other, either by network or cable, double-click on Network Neighborhood. Open the desired folders and drag the files you want to keep in sync from your main computer to the Briefcase icon on your notebook. The next time you connect your notebook computer to your main computer, click on Update All in My Briefcase to automatically replace the files in your main computer with the modified files from your notebook computer. Now, warning here, if you make changes to the files on both your main computer and notebook computer, you will lose the changes made on one or the other of the computers. The reason for this is My Briefcase compares the date and time of modifications between two files. The file with the older date and time gets overwritten with the file with the newer date and time. You've no doubt noticed the desktop has an icon called the Recycle Bin. This is an environmentally correct name for a trash can. It's basically a safety feature, a place where deleted files are kept until you decide to dispose of them altogether. Files arrive in your Recycle Bin a couple of ways. First, you might have deleted one using either Explorer or My Computer, for example. Second, you might have dragged an object, whether that's a file or a shortcut from your desktop or any open window, and placed it in the Recycle Bin. Regardless of how the item arrived there, you always have the option of rescuing it, that is, until you decide to permanently remove it from your hard disk. Double-click on the Recycle Bin icon, and it shows you recently deleted files with details of their size and where they came from. So you deleted something you didn't mean to. Lucky for you, the Recycle Bin has a restore function. Just right-click the item you want to restore from the Recycle Bin, and it's instantly put back where it came from. Before long, you may find you have a packed Recycle Bin, and that takes up space on your hard drive. You can permanently delete files by double-clicking open the Recycle Bin window and then clicking its File menu, and there choosing the Empty option. Or you can do it file by file, selecting a file using the File menu's Delete command. If the Recycle Bin strikes you as more trouble than it's worth, you can turn it off. Right-click on its icon and choose the Properties option. That will get you a window with a checkbox for deleting files directly. There it is. You can use this window also to minimize the amount of disk space reserved for the Recycle Bin, which will save you storage space on your hard disk. One more thing. Instead of dropping files for deletion into the Recycle Bin and then emptying the Recycle Bin, You can quickly delete a file by holding down the Shift key and dropping the file into the recycle bin or hitting the Delete key. Now, a word of caution, using this method for quickly deleting a file does not give you a second chance to change your mind and restore the file. It's gone. On the desktop there, you'll find an icon called Inbox. If you did not install Microsoft Mail, Microsoft Fax, and the Microsoft Network, clicking on the Inbox icon will summon a setup wizard to let you do this now. You'll need your installation disks or CD. If you have any or all of these elements installed already, clicking on the Inbox icon will bring up Microsoft Exchange, which is a brand new concept from Microsoft. Its purpose is to centralize all your email and fax activities in one place with a universal inbox and a universal outbox. It's supposed to work in the following way. If you get anything coming in, be it email or faxes, they go into your inbox. If you have anything going out, it's placed in the outbox awaiting your signal to send it. It's designed to work with Microsoft's own mail software as well as with the mail facilities of the Microsoft Network and certain other online services, so far only including CompuServe, but with others expected to come soon. If you've not already installed Exchange, be aware of a few things. It is a very large program and consumes huge amounts of memory. If you have 8 megabytes of memory or less, you will find that Exchange not only takes a long time to load, but it makes switching back and forth between it and other programs a tedious process as well. This is important because some of Exchange's functions require that it be loaded into memory whether you're using it at that moment or not. Many users will want to consider carefully whether Exchange's functions are worth the heavy memory requirements. Exchange's functions include faxes, network email, and receiving mail from an online service such as CompuServe or the Microsoft Network. It also supports what are called personal folders. More about personal folders in a minute. If you would like to add any of these services to your Microsoft Exchange settings, here's how you do it. From the Microsoft Exchange menu bar, click on Tools. Then click on Services. You should get the Services window with a list of your current services. If you don't see a service listed that you want, for example, CompuServe Mail Client, click the Add button. You should get the Add Service to Profile window. Select the service that you want to add. If you still don't see it, click the Have Disk button. You may then browse your system for the service that you want to add. Now, the mail systems Exchange currently supports include only the Microsoft Network and CompuServe. Exchange can access the email function of these two services directly, which means you don't have to launch a separate application just to check your mail. Support for other online services, as I said, is expected to come later. Similarly, Exchange's fax service, which is currently only Microsoft Fax, allows you to send and receive your faxes without launching a separate fax application. Now, about personal folders, which I mentioned earlier. This lets you categorize your email in faxes. For example, while all your incoming email and faxes might go into the inbox, you might want certain email and faxes pertaining to a special project to be kept separate from the rest. The Personal Folder service lets you create special folders for just this purpose. To do this, follow the steps to add a new service. Click the Add button on the Services window. Double-click on Personal Folders entry in the Add Service to Portfolio window. Select a location and type a file name for this new set of personal folders. You will also be prompted for a descriptive name for this new set of personal folders, as well as security information. Click OK until you're back to the Microsoft Exchange window. You should now see your new set of personal folders. To add a new folder to this set, say a folder for your particular project, make sure you have your new personal folder container selected, then click File, then New Folder. You'll be presented with the New Folder window where you can assign a name for this folder, in this case, the name of your project. Now, whenever you receive email or faxes, you can just drag and drop the message into the appropriate folder. Now, here are the steps for sending email and faxes. With Microsoft Exchange loaded, click on the New Message toolbar icon. You should now have the New Message window. Click on the To button and choose to whom you will send this message. This will open the address book window. Double-click on a name from the list, or click on the New button to create a new entry. You may want to select several recipients for this same message. After you finish selecting recipients, click the OK button. Now you should be back to the New Message window. Type a subject in the Subject field. Type your message text in the message area. As you may have noticed, you have basic control over the appearance of your message using what's called rich text format. You can change the font, the size, even the color. You can also attach a file to be sent along with the message. Click on the menu item Insert, then click on File, then choose the file, any file that you want to attach to your message. You can attach documents, spreadsheets, pictures, graphs, even sound and video files. However, keep in mind who your recipients are. If you're sending this message as a fax, your recipient won't be able to receive the sound or video file. But if your attached file is a word processing document, the document will be printed out on the recipient's fax machine. When you've finished typing your message and attaching any files, click on the Send toolbar icon. Your message to all the different recipients is placed in the outbox. When you're ready to deliver all your messages, click on the Tools menu, then on Deliver Now Using, then All Services. You can also do the same just by hitting Control-M. After your mail has been sent, it will be placed in the Sent Items folder. If there were any errors with the delivery, you will have a Return to Sender icon next to it. To receive email and faxes, you must have Microsoft Exchange up and running. You may receive faxes after a predetermined number of rings, after prompting the user to receive this call as a fax or not receive any faxes at all. For email from an online service such as Microsoft Network or CompuServe, you must dial the mail client to check for mail. If you have any mail waiting, it will be downloaded from the online service and placed in your inbox. To check for your mail, follow the same steps for delivering mail, or just hit Control-M. To read your received mail or faxes, double-click on the message in the inbox. After you've double-clicked on a received message, you may want to reply to the message. Click on the Reply to Sender toolbar icon. It looks like a person's head with a backwards-pointing arrow. Follow the steps for sending email and faxes. Note that a copy of your message is kept along with your reply. You may or may not want to delete it. If the message was sent to a group of people and you were one of those people in the group, you might want to reply to the entire group, not just the sender. Click on the Reply to All toolbar icon. It looks like two people's heads with a backwards pointing arrow. To forward this message to a different recipient, click the Forward toolbar icon. It looks like a person's head with a forward pointing arrow. Again, your messages are placed in the outbox awaiting your delivery instructions. A word is in order here about the Microsoft Network. It has been included, or at least the software to access the Microsoft Network has been included with Windows 95, but strictly speaking, it is not a part of Windows 95, and you are not obliged to accept the Microsoft Network or join the Microsoft Network in order to use Windows 95. It is an online service, much like America Online or CompuServe or Prodigy, and if you're interested in joining an online service and haven't done so already, you may want to study the comparisons between the various online services before making a decision. You may decide on the Microsoft Network. That is your choice, but there are other options, and they, like Microsoft, give away their access software so that you won't have to pay anything, at least for the software. You have to pay to join, but the software for the Microsoft Network and all these others is free. If you're like many people and you're still running old DOS programs, you can still use them in Windows 95. Since Windows 95 boots up in Windows mode, you'll need to start a DOS session. Click on the Start menu, select Programs, then select MS-DOS Prompt. You'll be brought to a DOS session where you can type all those neat DOS words like CD / and dir. You can also start a DOS session by clicking on the Start menu, select Run, then type, quote, DOS-PRMPT, DOS prompt, sort of. And another way, is to shut down your computer to DOS mode. Click on the Start menu, select Shut Down, then select Restart the computer in MS-DOS mode from the list. I know you want another way to get to DOS, so I'll give you one. While the computer is booting Windows 95, you can hold down the F8 key. You'll be given a menu of how to start your computer, and choose the option for Command Prompt, and you'll be brought up to a DOS prompt. Just as in Windows 3.1, you can run DOS applications from within Windows 95. You can run them the same way. But here's one other way to run a DOS application. Double-click on My Computer to open it. Double-click on a drive. Double-click on the folder of the DOS application you want to run. Find the file name of the DOS application and double-click on it. The executable file will have an icon that looks like a mini window. A DOS window will then open with your application running inside it. And just as with other files in Windows 95, you can create shortcuts to DOS applications. Just right-click on the DOS application file, drag it to its destination, say to the desktop, then release the right mouse button. From the short menu that appears, choose Create Shortcut Here. It's as simple as that. Once your DOS application is running, you can switch between having it in a window or full screen. To switch between these modes, hit Alt plus the Enter key. You'll also notice that in window mode, your DOS application window can be resized, just like any other Windows application, and the fonts adjust to the new size of the window. If there's still a DOS window open in Windows 95 after you've exited your DOS application, you will have to close it manually. This sort of window will have the words Finished across the Windows title bar. To close it, click on the X button in the upper right-hand corner of the window. If you've been running your DOS application in full screen mode, you'll have to type the word Exit at the DOS prompt and hit the Enter key. This can get to be a nuisance, so here's how to fix it. Right-click on the DOS Programs icon. Choose Properties. Choose the Program tab. That will bring you this window, and right here is a little box marked Close on Exit. Click on it, and from now on, when you exit a DOS program, Windows 95 will automatically close the window in which it was running. Although Windows 95 is intended to be crash-proof and self-healing, occasionally you will find that a program has died unexpectedly. In many cases, what might be called remains of the application will still be in memory and need to be removed. To remove these remnants, press Control-Alt-Delete. Now, it won't reboot your computer the way you're used to. You'll instead be given a window where you can choose which culprit program you would like to terminate. Luckily, even though applications die in Windows 95, its overall environment is normally not affected. Never turn off the computer unless Windows 95 tells you it's okay to do so. There are files that it needs to close and clean up after itself to make sure you don't lose any data. Also, keep in mind that when booting Windows 95, not to interrupt the process by turning off or resetting the computer. Doing so will bring you to the dreaded safe mode, a bare-bones version of Windows 95 in which you can't really do very much except shut down and restart the computer. Simply shut down from the safe mode if you ever get there, and then restart the computer. All right, I know why you bought that sound card and that CD-ROM drive. It was for your kids' educational programs, right? As you may have already seen, video game developers have been coming out with some elaborate and advanced games designed for Windows 95. Don't worry about your old games, they'll work fine too. In fact, with Windows 95's improved memory management, your old games may work even better. If blowing up the universe is not to your taste, there are some other really interesting games out there. Now, if you have a CD-ROM drive, here's a little trick. Remove any CD that may be in it and put any music CD you want in there. Windows 95 will usually, not always, but usually detect a music CD and load a CD-ROM player utility in the background and play the CD through your speakers. Now we hear the music, and we can see here on the taskbar is that little player utility. It's one of the programs running. One of Windows 3.1's notable features was a package of small, basic applications called accessories. Most of these have been retained in Windows 95, and several of them have been enhanced. The old Write program, for example, has been replaced with a more elaborate word processor called WordPad. It has some useful new features. There's a toolbar, a format bar, a status bar, and a ruler line. It supports such text formatting features as bullets to set off key passages. And it does make it easier as well to format different paragraphs in different ways. It's also file compatible with Microsoft Word 6 documents. But it is far from a full-featured word processor, and you probably won't want to give up your current writing program to use WordPad, but you may find the program handy for quick memos and short, simple documents, if only because it is small and you can get it started quickly. Windows 95 also has what's called HyperTerminal, a new communications program that replaces the old rudimentary terminal utility that was included with Windows 3.1. If your modem communications needs are very basic, you may find it has all you need, but it lacks, for example, a dialing directory, something that has become a standard feature of many popular modem programs. Instead, it gives you icons of online services, each with its own modem settings. It also improves upon the selection of file transfer protocols, improves over the old terminal utility. HyperTerminal includes many of the more advanced error-checking methods. The old Windows 3.1 Paintbrush program has been replaced with a new and more robust graphics package simply called Paint. It can, among other things, create images that can be imported into WordPad and other Windows applications which support graphics files. It also allows you to touch up images imported from other sources, providing, of course, that your computer has the necessary hardware to import, for example, a photograph. Besides these additions to the accessories group, there are some other little utilities and functions Windows 95 doesn't tell you much about. In the Windows folder, for example, you may find, depending on what configuration you chose during the install process, a little program called Resource Meter. Its file name is rsrcmtr.exe. When you load it, it puts this little gauge on the taskbar next to the clock, which lets you know when your system's memory is running low. If you own a laptop, you will also find that Windows 95 knows that without you telling it. When your system is plugged in, the clock window on the taskbar will display a plug. When you're on battery power, it will display a battery icon, and if you click on it, it will tell you how much power you have left. Or I should say it will tell you how much power it thinks you have left. Different portable computers have different kinds of batteries, and it would be almost impossible for one piece of software to be able to judge accurately the amount of power left in any or all of them. Your laptop probably came with a battery gauge. Don't delete it in the belief that the one in Windows 95 will do just as well, because there's a good chance it won't do just as well. How many of you have installed a program and figured out later it wasn't what you wanted and that you'd like to remove it? There's been a slew of programs to help you with this in the old Windows 3.1 environment, Clean Sweep, Uninstaller, just to name a couple. Now, Windows 95 has included its own uninstaller for programs that are compliant with the Windows 95 uninstall routine. Go to the Control Panel folder. You can do this either from My Computer or from the Start menu by selecting Settings from its list. Double-click the Add Remove Programs icon from the Control Panel folder. That will bring you to the Add Remove Programs Properties window. On the first tab, you'll find Install, Uninstall. Just select the program to uninstall and click the Add Remove button. Poof, it's gone. You can also install Windows options that you may have opted not to install during the Windows setup. Click on the tab Windows Setup and click on the checkbox next to the Windows component you want to install. Conversely, if you want to remove a Windows component, uncheck the box. Some of the components may have subcomponents. You'll see this in the area below the list box, and the Details button will be activated. To select or deselect any subcomponents, click the Details button. When you're done selecting or deselecting Windows components, click the OK button. You may be prompted for your Windows installation disk or CD to complete this update. At some point, you might like to give Windows 95 a little personality, a little style of your own. Besides just changing the desktop wallpaper, you can also change the system sounds, colors, even the mouse pointer. Now, to change the system sounds, click on the Start menu button. Click on Settings, click on Control Panel. You should now have the Control Panel window. Double-click on the Sounds icon, and from the Sounds Properties window, you can select a sound theme for your various Windows actions and systems message. You'll, of course, need to have a sound card and speakers to hear all these sounds properly. To change the Windows appearance, such as colors and system fonts, double-click on the display icon. And if you think the mouse could use some work, perhaps a larger, more visible pointer, double-click on the mouse icon. All the windows you will use to navigate around in Windows 95 have toolbars. The toolbar really is a handy way to delete, cut, copy, and paste files and folders. In addition, you can navigate to other folders by way of a pop-up list on the toolbar. To activate the toolbar of the current window, click on the View menu and check off Toolbar from the list. If you find that your desktop is getting cluttered with windows, you may want to have the folders open in the current window rather than open in a new window. To do this, click on the View menu and then choose the Options item. You'll be given the Options window. Choose the second radio button, Browse Folders, by using a single window that changes as you open each folder. To make your changes affect all windows, make your changes to the parent window, then close the window. The next time you access the parent window and go into child windows, the child windows will inherit the properties of the parent window and look the same. In Windows 95 and in its accessories or other small programs, and soon in all Windows 95 applications, you'll be able to take the toolbar, which all of these programs have, and move it to other parts of the screen. This can be handy if you find that the toolbar is taking up too much room and you still want to have it visible, but in another place. Simply click on any blank space on the toolbar and drag it to its new location and drop it. To put it back, dock it by clicking and dragging it back to its original location. You can choose to use the cursor keys instead of the mouse for more precise movement, such as in a drawing application, by turning the mouse keys options on under the accessibility options in Control Panel. For all those files that you swear have moved themselves somewhere else on your hard drive from where you left them, you now can find them quickly. Simply press Control Escape to activate the Start menu. Press Escape, then press F3, and that File Find window will now appear. I hope this survival guide has given you a feel for Windows 95 and a feeling that you can use the software with confidence that you will be able not only to find your way around, but also to customize it to your own tastes and needs. I haven't said much here about the technical improvements in Windows 95. For example, its memory management system, the so-called plug-and-play method of installing hardware, and the advanced techniques it incorporates for modem transmission. The reason is that the full effect of those changes won't be known or even really noticeable until the rest of the personal computer industry has a chance to bring its products into conformity with the new Windows 95 technical standards. Plug and play, for example, will eventually mean that all you will need to do with a new printer is hook it up to your computer, turn on your system, and go. Windows 95 will notice the new printer and automatically set it up. Some new printers designed to the plug-and-play standard are already on the market. As for the rest, however, you'll still have to install them in the conventional way you've come to know and certainly not love. In the meantime, you'll undoubtedly have questions that this survival guide does not answer, and you can spend a lot of money on long-distance support calls or buying books and other help products. The Internet, however, has made available a lot of sources of help that cost either nothing or very little. We have established a site on the Internet's World Wide Web with information about this survival guide and with information about other sources of free help. Its address is on the screen now. I hope you'll visit, I hope you'll find it useful, and I can tell you you'll certainly be welcome.